Inside Illinois State Prison, Chicago's shadow system. The system they don't see. Chicago is a city known for its architecture, its culture, and its history of crime. But beyond the headlines and courtroom verdicts, there exists a system most people never see. A system not defined by one building, one prison, or one story, but by a network. A shadow system. When people say Illinois State Prison, they're often imagining a single place, a massive facility hidden away from public view. But that's not how Illinois works. Illinois doesn't have one prison. It has a system. A system made up of more than 24 correctional facilities, each with its own level of security, its own population, and its own controversies. And many of those stories trace back to one place, Chicago. Because while prisons may sit miles away from the city, the pipeline often starts here. Arrests, charges, convictions, transfers, and eventually, incarceration. This is the story of how that system operates, and what happens inside it.
Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started.
What Illinois State Prison really means. There is no official facility called Illinois State Prison. Instead, the term is often used informally to describe the entire network operated by the Illinois Department of Corrections, also known as IDOC. As of recent reports, Illinois operates more than 25 adult correctional centers, along with several treatment and transition facilities. These range from minimum security centers to maximum security prisons. Some of the most well-known include Stateville Correctional Center, Pontiac Correctional Center, Menard Correctional Center, Cook County Jail, technically a county facility, but central to the system. Each one plays a different role. Some house inmates awaiting trial. Others hold individuals serving life sentences. And some are designed for short-term detention before transfer. Together, they form a system that processes tens of thousands of individuals every year. The pipeline from Chicago. For many inmates in Illinois, the journey begins in Chicago. Cook County, which includes Chicago, is one of the largest unified court systems in the United States. And its jail, Cook County Jail, is among the largest single-site jails in the country. On any given day, thousands of individuals are held there, many awaiting trial, others serving short sentences. From here, individuals may be released, transferred, or sent deeper into the state prison system. This movement, from city arrest to state incarceration, is what some researchers and journalists have described as a pipeline. But how that pipeline operates, and who moves through it, is a subject of ongoing debate. Inside Cook County Jail. Cook County Jail is not a prison in the traditional sense. It's a pretrial detention facility. That means many of the people inside have not been convicted of a crime. They are legally presumed innocent. And yet, they are confined, sometimes for months, or even years, while their cases move through the courts. At times, the jail population has exceeded 10,000 detainees. In recent years, reforms have reduced that number, but it remains one of the largest jail systems in the United States. Conditions inside have been the subject of multiple investigations. Reports have documented issues including overcrowding, particularly in earlier decades. Mental health challenges among detainees. Staffing shortages. Officials have implemented reforms, including expanded mental health services and population reduction efforts. But critics argue that deeper systemic issues remain unresolved. Transfer into the state system. Once an individual is convicted and sentenced to prison, they leave the jail system behind and enter the custody of the Illinois Department of Corrections. This transition is more than just a physical transfer. It marks a shift in legal status, from detainee to inmate. Upon arrival at a state facility, individuals go through intake processing. This includes medical and psychological evaluation, classification assessment, security level determination. Based on these factors, inmates are assigned to specific facilities. Some will go to minimum security centers. Others, to maximum security prisons. Where they go, and how long they stay, depends on multiple factors, including sentence length, criminal history, behavior. But the system is not always predictable. And placement decisions have been criticized in some cases as inconsistent. Stateville, the symbol of the system. If one facility represents the Illinois prison system more than any other, it's Stateville Correctional Center. Located in Crest Hill, just outside Chicago, Stateville has operated for over a century. It is one of the oldest prisons in the state, and one of the most controversial. Its most recognizable structure is the F-House, a circular cell block designed using a panopticon-style layout. This design allows guards to observe multiple cells from a central point. But over time, the facility has faced criticism for aging infrastructure and conditions. Multiple reports have documented concerns including extreme heat in summer months, limited ventilation, structural deterioration. In recent years, officials have announced plans to close parts of the facility. But for decades, Stateville has stood as a symbol of the system, both its history and its challenges. Maximum security, Pontiac and Menard. For inmates classified as high risk, the destination is often one of Illinois' maximum security prisons. Two of the most well-known, Pontiac Correctional Center and Menard Correctional Center. These facilities house individuals convicted of serious offenses, including violent crimes. Security is strict. Movement is controlled. And daily life follows a rigid structure. Historically, both facilities have experienced periods of unrest, including incidents involving violence, lockdowns, and staffing challenges. State officials have implemented various measures over time to address these issues. But maximum security prisons remain among the most tightly controlled environments in the system. A system under scrutiny. The Illinois prison system has not operated without criticism. Over the years, investigations by journalists, watchdog groups, and government agencies have raised concerns about conditions of confinement, healthcare access, staffing shortages, aging infrastructure. Some lawsuits have challenged conditions in specific facilities. Advocacy groups have called for reforms. And state officials have responded with policy changes and proposed improvements. But the system remains under scrutiny. Because what happens inside these facilities affects not just inmates, but the communities they eventually return to. Why this story matters. For many viewers, prisons feel distant, separate from everyday life. But the reality is different. Most incarcerated individuals will eventually be released. And when they are, they return to communities, often the same ones where their journey began. That means the prison system doesn't just impact those inside it. It shapes neighborhoods, families, and futures. Understanding how that system works is the first step to understanding its broader impact. Daily life inside Illinois prisons. Entering the cell. Inside Illinois prisons, daily life is structured around confinement. A standard cell in many facilities is designed for one person. But due to population pressures over the years, some cells have housed two individuals, a practice known as double celling. Cells typically include a metal bunk bed, a toilet and sink combination, limited storage space. In older facilities like Stateville, infrastructure varies significantly. Some housing units reflect designs from the early 20th century, with limited ventilation and aging materials. Conditions differ by facility, but reports have consistently noted that older prisons face greater challenges maintaining modern standards. Count time, the rhythm of control. Every day is governed by a strict schedule. One of the most important routines is count time. At multiple points throughout the day and night, correctional officers verify the presence of every inmate. During count, movement stops. Inmates must remain in assigned position. Silence is often enforced. Counts are a fundamental security measure. If a count is off, even by one person, the facility can go into lockdown until the issue is resolved. This system ensures accountability. But it also reinforces the constant structure of prison life. Movement and restriction. Movement inside prison is controlled and limited. Inmates do not move freely. Instead, movement is scheduled and supervised. This includes meals, recreation time, medical visits, work assignments. Each transition involves security checks. Doors open and close in sequence. Officers monitor each step. In higher security facilities, movement may be even more restricted, with some inmates spending most of their time inside their cells. The level of freedom varies depending on classification. But in all cases, movement is controlled by the institution, not the individual. Meals, routine and reality. Meals are one of the few consistent events in the daily routine. In Illinois prisons, inmates typically receive 3 meals per day. Menus are standardized and designed to meet basic nutritional requirements. Meals often include protein source, such as beans, meat, or eggs, bread or grains, vegetables, occasionally fruit. Special diets may be provided for medical or religious reasons. However, reports from oversight groups have sometimes raised concerns about food quality, portion consistency, sanitation in preparation areas. Officials maintain that meals meet required standards, but perceptions of quality vary among inmates. Work and programs. Work assignments are a central part of prison life for many inmates. Depending on the facility and classification, inmates may be assigned to roles such as kitchen work, laundry services, maintenance, groundskeeping. Some facilities also offer educational and vocational programs. These can include GED classes, trade skills training, substance abuse programs. Participation varies. Availability depends on funding, staffing, and facility resources. Research has shown that access to education and job training can play a role in reducing recidivism. But not all inmates have equal access to these programs. Healthcare inside prison. Healthcare in prisons is a legally required service. In Illinois, medical care for inmates is provided through contracted healthcare providers under state oversight. Services include routine medical care, emergency treatment, mental health services. However, healthcare in Illinois prisons has faced significant scrutiny. In 2010, a federal civil rights investigation found deficiencies in medical care within the state prison system. This led to ongoing oversight and reforms aimed at improving services. Concerns raised in reports have included delays in treatment, staffing shortages, access to specialists. State officials have taken steps to address these issues, but oversight continues. Mental health, a growing challenge. Mental health has become one of the most significant challenges in correctional systems nationwide. Illinois is no exception. A substantial portion of the prison population has been identified as having mental health needs. Facilities have developed specialized units and services to address these needs. But reports indicate ongoing challenges, including high demand for services, limited staffing, difficulties in providing consistent care. Cook County Jail, in particular, has been described in some reports as one of the largest mental health facilities in the country. This reflects a broader issue, the intersection between the criminal justice system and mental health care. Discipline and segregation. When inmates violate prison rules, disciplinary action may follow. One of the most serious forms is segregation, sometimes referred to as solitary confinement. In segregation, inmates are housed separately from the general population. Movement is heavily restricted. Time outside the cell is limited. The use of segregation has been widely debated. Critics argue that extended isolation can have negative psychological effects. Correctional officials maintain that it is necessary for safety and order in certain situations. Policies regarding segregation have evolved over time, with some reforms aimed at limiting its use. Communication with the outside world. Despite confinement, inmates maintain limited contact with the outside world. This includes phone calls, mail correspondence, in some cases, electronic messaging systems. Visits are also permitted under controlled conditions. These may be in-person visits, video visits, in some facilities. Communication is monitored and regulated. Costs associated with phone calls have been a subject of public debate, with efforts in some jurisdictions to reduce fees. Maintaining contact with family is often considered an important factor in successful reentry after release. The invisible rules. Beyond official policies, prison life is shaped by informal dynamics. These are not written in manuals, but they influence daily interactions. They include social hierarchies among inmates, unspoken rules about behavior, strategies for avoiding conflict. These dynamics vary by facility and population. And while not officially documented in policy, they are frequently described in first-hand accounts and research studies. Understanding prison life requires looking beyond formal rules to the lived experiences inside. As the day ends, the structure remains. Final counts are conducted. Cells are secured. And the cycle repeats, day after day. For some, this routine lasts months. For others, years. Or decades. Because while daily life may seem repetitive, the long-term impact of that routine is anything but simple. Violence, gangs, and control, what really happens behind the walls. The question of safety. Safety inside prison is one of the most complex and debated aspects of the correctional system. Officially, prisons are designed to maintain order, strict routines, layered security, constant supervision. But no system is without risk. Incidents involving violence between inmates, and sometimes involving staff, have been documented across correctional systems nationwide, including Illinois. The level of risk varies by facility, classification level, and population. Maximum security prisons tend to experience more serious incidents, but even lower security facilities are not immune. State reports track these incidents, but not all details are always made public. And in some cases, what happens inside remains difficult to fully verify. A history of incidents. Illinois prisons, like many across the United States, have experienced periods of unrest. Historically, facilities such as Pontiac Correctional Center and Menard Correctional Center have been associated with major incidents in past decades. These have included inmate uprisings, violent confrontations, extended lockdowns. Some events resulted in injuries and, in certain cases, fatalities. Details of specific incidents vary, and official records provide limited public information on some cases. In response, correctional policies have evolved over time to increase control measures and improve emergency response procedures. But the legacy of these events continues to shape how facilities operate today. Gang presence in prisons. One of the most widely discussed aspects of prison life is the presence of gangs. Research and law enforcement reports have documented that organized groups can exist within correctional facilities. In Illinois, some gangs have historical ties to Chicago street organizations. This connection can extend from neighborhoods into prison environments. However, it is important to understand, not all inmates are affiliated with gangs. And not all facilities experience the same level of organized activity. Correctional staff monitor and track group affiliations as part of security operations. But the full extent of internal dynamics is not always visible from outside. Some accounts come from official reports, others from former inmates and investigative journalism. And not all claims can be independently verified. How control is maintained. To manage risk, prisons rely on layered control systems. These include surveillance cameras, controlled movement schedules, intelligence gathering on inmate activity, staff presence in housing units. In high-security environments, additional measures may include restricted movement protocols, segregation units, increased staff-to-inmate supervision. Correctional officers play a central role in maintaining order. Their responsibilities include monitoring behavior, enforcing rules, responding to incidents. Training and procedures are designed to minimize risk. But the effectiveness of these measures can depend on staffing levels, facility conditions, and available resources. Staffing shortages and their impact. Staffing levels have been a recurring issue in Illinois prisons. Reports over the years have highlighted shortages of correctional officers and support staff. This can affect response times to incidents, supervision levels, access to programs and services. Unions representing correctional officers have raised concerns about safety and workload. State officials have acknowledged staffing challenges and, at times, implemented hiring initiatives. However, maintaining consistent staffing across facilities remains an ongoing issue. And when staffing is strained, the overall system can be impacted. Lockdowns, when the system stops. A lockdown is one of the most serious operational responses inside a prison. During a lockdown, inmates are confined to their cells. Movement is halted. Programs and activities are suspended. Lockdowns can be triggered by security threats, violent incidents, staffing shortages. Some lockdowns last hours. Others can extend for days or longer. Extended lockdowns have been the subject of concern from advocacy groups, particularly when they limit access to healthcare, recreation, or communication. Officials maintain that lockdowns are necessary to restore order and ensure safety. Contraband and enforcement. Contraband refers to prohibited items inside prison. This can include cell phones, weapons, drugs. Correctional facilities conduct regular searches to detect and remove contraband. Despite these efforts, reports indicate that prohibited items do sometimes enter facilities. How contraband enters prisons varies. Possible sources include visitors, mail systems, internal breaches. Exact methods are not always publicly detailed for security reasons. Enforcement efforts continue to evolve as new risks emerge. Use of force. Correctional officers are authorized to use force under specific conditions. Policies define when and how force can be applied. This may include situations involving immediate threats to safety, attempts to escape, physical altercations. Use of force incidents are typically documented and reviewed. Oversight mechanisms may include internal investigations, external review bodies, in some cases. However, concerns have been raised in some reports about transparency and accountability. These issues are part of broader national conversations about correctional practices. What we don't see. Not everything that happens inside prison walls is visible to the public. Some information is documented in official reports. Some emerges through journalism. Some comes from lawsuits and court records. And some remains unclear. This lack of visibility has led to ongoing calls for transparency and oversight. Because understanding the system requires more than policy documents. It requires access. And access is often limited. Between control and reality. On paper, prisons are systems of control. Structured, regulated, monitored. But in reality, they are also environments shaped by human behavior. Unpredictable, complex, and constantly changing. The balance between control and reality is not always stable. And maintaining that balance is one of the system's greatest challenges. If this story changed the way you see the prison system, you're not alone. What happens behind those walls doesn't stay there. It shapes lives, families, and entire communities. If you want more real, fact-based crime documentaries like this, make sure you subscribe to Life Behind Bars and turn on notifications. And if you have a case or system you want us to uncover next, drop it in the comments. Because some stories aren't just told, they're exposed.